February 25th. Okay, here's more recent. Shut you down. I don't want to see you. Years in the making, federal government is poised to introduce a new piece of legislation Monday aimed at addressing children, protecting kids, protecting children. That's what it's all about, so they say. Unconsensual AI prawn deepfakes. This is why my wife and I do not share photos of our children, not their faces anyways, online, because of stuff like this. They really don't need a digital presence. They didn't ask for that. And if you were a parent, I would it's your child. You do you, boo-boo, but I would strongly recommend removing your child's face from online. Don't give it's not worth the risk. It is not worth the risk. You want to put up a cute baby photo of your child doing something cute to get a few extra likes. Get over it. Get them offline. That is the best thing you could possibly do. After I did last week's episode on AI, and my guest Ward from Sigma 41 said that AI is actually our only hope as AI deepfakes, whether it be prawn or otherwise, get better and harder for us to detect. It will take AI to identify these deepfakes. And a friend of mine from Portugal reached out. His buddy actually just sold an AI company for $1 million, and I think it's actually €1 million, and is working on another program right now, another AI-based program that's sole purpose tech. I don't know how it's all going to work out, but it's interesting. It's interesting how a Canadian law is going to stop AI deepfakes. It's not. So it's just very, very concerning to see how this is developing. At any rate, the legislation is not expected to provide law enforcement with new powers. We're not going to provide the law enforcement with new powers. No, no, no. We're just going to change and amend the existing laws and acts that they can already enforce. We're just going to change some definitions around here so it makes it easier for them to do what they already do, which is enforce these acts and these laws. But we're not giving them new powers, not at all. Okay, put on the notice paper for Monday's return to the HOC, House of Commons. Okay, so Bill C-63 is House of Commons bill, which will then, as we'll see, is also worrisome for reasons, and we'll see that too. The bill proposes to enact the Online HARMS Act. Okay, here I think is the first time we've read it during this live stream. So we're going to act the Online HARMS Act and advance amendments to the Criminal Code, the Canadian Human Rights Act, Internet Child Prawn. Okay, so remember, we're not providing law enforcement with any new powers. We're just changing the Criminal Code, which they already enforce. They're not any new enforcement powers. They can already enforce the Criminal Code. We're just going to change what it means to be a criminal. And we're going to change the Canadian Human Rights Act. We're going to amend it. It's a little cross some T's and dot some I's. Make some changes here. So it's not the first time the Liberals have tried to advance legislation to this effect. No, they are a wave, constantly beating against the bow of the ship, the hull of the ship, the wave after wave after wave. They just keep coming. They just keep coming. And you get tired of it, and eventually something gets through. You have to stay awake, my friends. You have to pay attention to this type of stuff. And voting for Pierre Poilievre is not the magic solution. But you do have to get active, and you do have to actually fight back. Conservatives, I'm going to stop you for a second. Conservatives are really, really good at holding the line, right? Progressives, when they get into power, they move us like 50 steps in their direction. And conservatives get in power and they stop right there. No more movement. Then when progressives get in, we go 50 more steps. When conservatives get in, no more movement. We actually have, and that's how like that Overton window has shifted so much. We need to get somebody in a position of power that will actually start to walk things back. And whether that means just letting it destroy itself, letting the ship sink and starting something entirely new, or whether there's possibility for reform in the current system, I don't know that there is. I don't know if there is at a federal level, but maybe we can start small at a local level and start to affect change there. I'm really interested to pick David Parker's brain about that. We're going to be talking about that a lot on March. Okay, government officials from the Department of Canadian Heritage and the Department of Justice will hold a technical briefing for reporters on Monday afternoon, followed by a press conference led by Justice Minister Riva Virani, according to a media advisory. What online harms will be included? While the full scope of legislation won't be revealed until it's made public upon tabling in the House of Commons, it's expected to be an evolved version of the Liberals' initial proposal to include an emphasis on harms to youth. Once again, it's all about the children. I can't stress that enough. Originally, the government set out wanting to impose rules and regulations that would require online platforms to be more accountable for and transparent about 5 kinds of harmful content. Amazing. Hate speech was the last, and now it's the first. They went from the last on the list of ingredients to the prioritized on the list of ingredients. What the heck? Child exploitation is last. Is this intentional? Normally, when you look on the list of ingredients here, the most important one and the priority is listed first. And we just read those articles before. And again, this is, I don't know who wrote this article. This is what? Unbiased reporting. But it's interesting that the previous article said it's about child exploitation and the sharing of non-consensual images. And I commented, remember, like, it's weird. Why would there be any sharing of intimate images of children, period, consensual or not? But now hate speech and in addition to these areas of focus, according to a senior source CTV News spoke with, concerns were also raised during consultations about kids experiencing cyberbullying and incite through this legislation. And the penalties are insane. I'm not saying you should tell somebody to go unalive themselves. And if you ever did, I'm not saying they should do that. But the penalties for saying something like that is absolutely crazy. Sticks and stones will break your bones, but names will land you in jail for life. Part of the legislation's measures to tackle the non-consensual sharing of intimate images of children, again, I don't understand, will include, can there be any consensual sharing of intimate images of children? No, you can't. Children can't consent. Children cannot consent. Will include the cracking down on the rising trend of sexually explicit deepfakes and allowing for specific takedown requirements, which become known as revenge porn, as has been reported. Once again, legislation is not catch you for making the deepfake, but really the only solution for deepfakes as AI gets better is also AI, which is a scary thought. The source said, despite the recent calls for action to address this area sparked by international headlines related to fake images circulating of megastars Taylor Swift. I never thought I'd read her name in an article related to child porn. You know what I mean? The government has been working on legislative amendments to this effect for some time. Which minister is taking the lead? Okay. Virani would be taking the lead on the incoming bill rather than Heritage Minister Pascal Saint-Onge. Earlier this week, he was quietly sworn in as Minister of State, online harms. Minister of State, the Ministry of State. Actually, the bill does talk about what they call a digital. Oh, we're going to get to that. I have it written down here. We're going to get to that. There's a whole department with the ombuds person is going to be hired for this Ministry of Truth, essentially. This, from a machinery of government perspective, is likely to allow the Justice Minister to continue to lap into Canadian Heritage Department resources as the bill winds its way through Parliament. More excuses to take your money and put it where we want it. And putting our opponents, our political opponents, behind bars. We know our government is no stranger to that. Hashtag Coots2, Coots4, Coots Alberta, Freedom Convoy, Emergencies Act. Hello? Crazy. Interesting side point. If you go to hategate.ca and read the Hategate affair, which details how CSIS they investigated right-wing extremists and Diagolon and the threat to our democracy and the reason for the Emergencies Act. CSIS said, yeah, these guys are actually, they're not an actual threat. They're not even a real organization. But the government was working on information given to it by Anti-Hate, which is government funded. It's like the government paying CBC to go report on something, then reporting back to the government. It's basically the same thing. It's basically like the activist wing of the government. The CBC is the media wing of the government. Anti-Hate is the activist wing of the liberal, we'll call them the communist government, because let's be straight, that's what they are. Giving them money to report on hateful content, which is anyone that dissents, disagrees with the opinion, is on the opposite side of the political aisle. And if they're labeled as hate, they can receive lots of penalties, which we're going to get into, some severe penalties for wrongthink. Yeah, literally for wrongthink. Before being shoveled into the portfolio, St. Ange spoke to CB News last year about how she's personally seen the need for legislation to better protect people online. First introduction that was known as Bill C-36. It's now Bill C-63, by the way. Let's not get confused. Which was tabled at the 11th hour of the last parliament that focused on hate speech. It died on the order paper and has never been revisited. So we just did the little palindrome here, made 3663, and it's back on the table with even more crazy shit inside of it. Amazing. Will this be a political hot potato? Well, it will be an election issue. If it gets passed, in which I don't know that it won't, and that worries me. We have a 2025 election. Now, here's a question, just out of curiosity. If this bill does get passed, becomes law, the Online HARMS Act becomes a real thing, and the Conservatives win the election, will they repeal it? Will they repeal any part of it? Or will they just leave it? Oh, this is Justin Trudeau's bill. We're going to focus on affordability and housing and the carbon tax, AXA tax, and all that. And then this Online HARMS Act, because it does give the government sweeping powers. So are they going to repeal it if it passes? Will they let it pass? Our House of Commons is basically largely three parties. You have Bloc Québécois, the Quebec Separatist Party, Bloc Québécois, also there. But for those that aren't aware, our Liberal Party, which is our governing party, has a coalition with the NDP, the New Democrats, i.e. the Socialists, i.e. Communists, let's be real, that basically they prop each other. The NDP is propping, we'll call them the oranges and the reds, okay? The NDP's color is orange, Liberals reds. The oranges are propping up the reds, and they kind of go along with everything there to basically be their power-sharing vampires. And the blues, which are Conservatives, are the opposition. But the Conservatives are not as large as those two parties, the oranges and the reds together. So if they can work together, they can basically make anything happen that the blues don't want to have happen. Scary times. Already attempting to dispel the Conservative line of attack. Now, this bill is centrally about censorship. Trudeau told reporters this week that the legislation will be very specifically focused on protecting kids and not on censoring the internet. Hate speech, terrorist. Remember? Anyways, how do you know if Justin Trudeau's lying? Well, if he's talking, you know he's lying. We know and everyone can agree that our kids are vulnerable online. We need to do a better job as a society of protecting our kids online the way we protect them in schoolyards, Trudeau said. The way we protect them in schoolyards, by giving them a safe place to have their dicks cut off and have drugs given to them and to change them to another gender and change their names and change their entire life and identity without their parents knowing, because we're really protecting them in schoolyards. This fucking guy. Woo! He makes me mad. It's attack of freedom. His latest attack on freedom of expression. Yes, it is. It's an attack on freedom of expression. Absolutely. Do I think, me as a person individually, think that children need to be protected from predators online? Yes. And in real life, yes. This is not the way to do that, though. Not the way to do that. Boom. Okay, so